In a significant shift in U.S. China trade relations, the Biden administration is reportedly considering substantial reductions to the tariffs imposed during the Trump era. This potential move comes amidst a backdrop of heightened tensions and escalating trade conflicts between the two nations, which have seen tariffs soar to unprecedented levels. According to reports from the Wall Street Journal, the White House is exploring options that could have existing tariffs on Chinese imports, potentially lowering them to between 50% and 65%, or implementing a tiered system based on import sensitivity. President Donald Trump has publicly acknowledged the high tariffs, stating that the current 145% rate on certain goods is very high and hinted at significant reductions in the near future. His comments follow a series of retaliatory actions taken by both countries, with the U.S. imposing additional levies in early April, pushing tariffs on Chinese goods even higher. These aggressive measures, which included a 34% increase on top of existing tariffs, have led to a tit-for-tat escalation where both nations have enacted substantial tariffs on each other's goods. The impact of these tariffs has been felt across various sectors, notably within the housing market. Mortgage lender stocks have plummeted, with all 9 publicly traded lenders analyzed by HousingWire experiencing declines since early April. Notably, Rocket Mortgage, despite a previous surge due to acquisitions, saw its stock drop 2.3% following the tariff announcements. Homebuilders heavily reliant on imported materials have also been affected, with construction costs rising significantly due to tariffs on steel and aluminum. As the Biden administration contemplates these tariff reductions, the response from China has been one of skepticism. Officials in Beijing have dismissed reports of active negotiations as fake news, asserting that no formal discussions on tariffs have taken place. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs emphasized their willingness to engage in talks, but only on an equal and reciprocal basis, reflecting a profound mistrust that has characterized U.S. China relations. Amidst these developments, President Trump has indicated that if negotiations with other countries do not yield results within the next few weeks, he will impose tariffs as a fallback. He underscored the ongoing communication between the U.S. and China, stating that they are in contact every day, yet he refrained from providing specifics about the potential outcomes of these discussions. In light of the evolving landscape of U.S. China trade relations, analysts are closely monitoring the implications of these tariff deliberations. The potential easing of trade tensions could signal a shift towards more collaborative economic policies. But the deep-seated mistrust between the two nations poses significant challenges. As the Biden administration navigates this complex terrain, the outcomes of these deliberations will likely have far-reaching consequences for global trade dynamics and domestic economic stability. Looking ahead, the coming weeks will be critical as the U.S. government weighs its options and seeks to balance economic interests with geopolitical considerations. The path toward reducing tariffs may not only reshape the U.S.-China trade relationship but could also redefine the landscape of international trade in the years to come. In a complex and rapidly evolving landscape of international trade, the tensions between the United States and China have reached a boiling point, with recent statements from both nations revealing a stark divide in their negotiations over tariffs. As the world watches closely, the implications of these developments are profound, not only for the two largest economies but also for the global market at large. On April 24, 2025, President Donald Trump asserted that the U.S. and China are actively engaged in discussions concerning their contentious trade practices. However, this claim was met with swift denial from Beijing. Wei Jiaquan, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry, emphatically stated that there were no ongoing consultations or negotiations regarding tariffs, characterizing Trump's assertions as false. He added, "If it's a fight, we will fight to the end," highlighting the resolute stance of the Chinese government in the face of escalating trade tensions. The backdrop to this standoff is significant. Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods have reached levels unprecedented in U.S. history, with an average rate of 145%, while China has retaliated with its own tariffs reaching 125%. These tit-for-tat measures have effectively created a mutual trade embargo, raising fears of a global recession. The volatility of the markets has been palpable, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average experiencing fluctuations amid these conflicting narratives. After Trump's comments about possible tariff reductions, stocks initially surged before quickly cooling off, a reflection of the uncertainty that now permeates the trading environment. Amidst this chaos, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent provided a contrasting viewpoint, suggesting that both sides are waiting to speak to the other, hinting at a potential de-escalation of tensions. However, he did not elaborate on any concrete plans, leaving analysts skeptical. Lee Branstetter, a professor of economics at Carnegie Mellon University, pointed out that the suggestion of tariff reductions without any prior concessions from China could be perceived as a retreat by the U.S. administration. That, to me, is consistent with the view that the president did not really think through the consequences of his tariff decisions, he noted. The economic ramifications of this impasse are already being felt. The International Monetary Fund recently revised its growth forecasts for the U.S. China and other countries, attributing the downgrade to the impact of the ongoing trade war. Industry experts are particularly concerned about potential shortages in retail due to cancelled shipments, with reports indicating that Hapag-Lloyd, a major shipping company, has seen a 30% reduction in shipments to the U.S. from China. This sentiment was echoed by Gary Ng, a senior economist at Natixis, who emphasized the precarious position of China's export-driven economy, suggesting that a failure to negotiate could exacerbate domestic economic challenges. As the situation develops, it has become increasingly apparent that the Chinese leadership is not inclined to make hasty concessions. Wu Xinhua, a government advisor affiliated with the foreign ministry, expressed skepticism over Trump's intentions, stating, "We don't care about what he wants." This sentiment reinforces the notion that while the U.S. may be seeking assurances to stabilize its domestic market, China appears resolute in its approach, willing to endure economic discomfort rather than capitulate to perceived pressures. Looking forward, the potential for a resolution seems uncertain. As both countries navigate their respective political landscapes, the stakes continue to rise, with domestic pressures mounting on both sides. The Trump administration faces the challenge of mitigating economic fallout while maintaining a tough stance against China, whereas Beijing must balance its own economic needs against the backdrop of a slowing global economy. In conclusion, the future of U.S.-China trade relations remains precarious. With both nations entrenched in their positions, the possibility of meaningful dialogue appears slim. The coming weeks will be critical as stakeholders on both sides assess the viability of ongoing negotiations, the impacts of tariffs on their economies, and the broader implications for international trade. As history has shown, the path to resolution is often fraught with complexities, and the global community is keenly aware that the outcomes of this standoff could shape economic landscapes for years to come. In a striking reflection of escalating tensions between the United States and China, state lawmakers across the U.S. have introduced over 240 anti-China proposals this year. These measures are aimed at curbing the influence of Chinese technology and investments within American borders, marking a significant shift from years of fostering trade relations. The proposals range from banning the purchase of Chinese drones and apps to severing sister city ties between American and Chinese communities, demonstrating a growing wariness of Chinese involvement in various sectors. Kansas's new legislation exemplifies this trend, as it prohibits the purchase of Chinese technology for police use and extends to medical equipment and artificial intelligence. Arkansas's efforts have similarly targeted sister city relationships in contracts for promotional items, while Tennessee has gone as far as to deny health insurance coverage for organ transplants carried out in China. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who spearheaded a broad communist China defense package, stated, "Either the United States or China is going to lead the world in the next few decades. For me, I want it to be the U.S." This wave of anti-China sentiment is not entirely new. It has roots that predate the Trump administration, which notably intensified the rhetoric surrounding China. However, political dynamics have shifted significantly as GOP-controlled legislatures have been particularly active in pushing these proposals. An analysis by the Associated Press highlights that anti-China measures have emerged in 41 states, reflecting a broader trend of bipartisan support for a more aggressive stance against perceived threats from Beijing. Experts attribute the recent surge in anti-China proposals to factors such as heightened political rhetoric and significant events like the COVID-19 pandemic, which have fostered a more critical view of China in the eyes of American voters. Kyle Jaros, an associate professor at the University of Notre Dame, noted that the first Trump administration's approach diverged sharply from that of the Obama administration, which had emphasized local engagement with China. The sentiment among voters has shifted dramatically, making it politically advantageous for lawmakers to adopt a tougher stance. The perception of China as an adversary has been further solidified by incidents like the Chinese balloon that traversed U.S. airspace in 2023. Critics of Chinese policies, particularly under President Xi Jinping, argue that such actions have made it easier for state officials to frame Chinese investments as security threats. Kansas House Majority Leader Chris Croft emphasized the need for a concerted effort against China, asserting all of us have a part to play. Despite the rising tide of anti-China sentiment, some lawmakers express skepticism over the effectiveness of these measures. Critics argue that many restrictions may be akin to selling snow shovels in Miami. Given that interests from adversarial nations hold a minuscule fraction of U.S. agricultural land. The pushback includes voices from within conservative circles such as North Dakota Senator Dale Patton, who questioned the consistency of lawmakers advocating for divestment from Chinese companies while likely using Chinese manufactured goods themselves. Looking ahead, the momentum of these proposals shows little sign of slowing. As states continue to grapple with concerns over cybersecurity and economic dependence on China, experts warn that the potential for conflict may increase. The evolving geopolitical landscape suggests that states will remain vigilant and proactive in addressing what they perceive as threats from China, even as the broader implications of these measures unfold. In parallel, the U.S. military is also preparing for the implications of a more assertive China, particularly regarding its advancements in hypersonic missile technology. Recent reports have confirmed that China possesses the world's leading hypersonic missile arsenal capable of threatening U.S. Navy ships. The Defense Department has highlighted the challenges associated with these weapons, which can maneuver mid-flight and approach targets at speeds exceeding 5 times the speed of sound, complicating existing defense systems. As tensions mount, U.S. lawmakers and military officials alike are facing a complex and evolving challenge, one that intertwines national security, international trade, and the future of U.S. China relations. The coming months will likely see further developments as both state legislatures and the federal government respond to these multifaceted pressures.